Hi everyone. So today we're going to explore the realms of patterns and cycles within our bodies, the world around us, and then along our spiritual journey. We're going to talk about how we as humans have almost been kind of programmed to resist a lot of these patterns and how it causes a great deal of disruption to our physical, emotional, and spiritual selves. And then lastly, I'm going to help you to figure out how you can get yourself back into these patterns in order for it to be beneficial to you along your journey. And so for anybody who's never seen my face before, hi, I'm Elizabeth Blackwell from Blissful Home and Body. And I specialize in setting sacred spaces and helping you along your journey to your highest and greatest self. So let's get started. As I said in one of my last videos, I kind of got this pull to open each one of these videos with an affirmation that it seemed like was needed for this community, and then to close it with a message that I was feeling like I needed to be put out into this world. So for today's affirmation, it's that change is scary, but it is also what gives us that opportunity to spark growth for that bright, beautiful future. We don't have to look too far to find examples of the natural cycles and patterns of things. Within the world around us, the seasons are a perfect example. We go from spring to summer to fall to winter. The moon goes through cycles and phases. The ocean. And then, of course, within Mother Nature, there is a natural cycle of birth or sprouting, growth, death, and then so on. Within our own bodies, my guess is there's a lot more cycles to things than you probably think about on a daily basis. Our breathing is a natural cycle. Our heart works in a pattern. Our hormones, whether we are male or female, will naturally have an ebb and flow. And then there's many cycles along our spiritual journey as well. And all of these things are very interconnected. But one of the issues that we have is we as human beings have evolved so quickly, we have interrupted a lot of these natural cycles and patterns to things. I was actually having a discussion with one of my children the other day, and he has just a more difficult time during the winter months. And he said to me, Mom, human beings have been experiencing winter since the birth of humanity. I don't understand why I have such a hard time with it. And so I pointed out to him that yes, humans have always been experiencing the natural cycle of the seasons, but we have evolved so quickly that we have now interrupted a lot of these natural cycles. So the seasons are kind of the first area that I want to touch upon, how we've really interrupted our natural human cycles. So if you go back not too long ago, within the last 100 to 150 years, we didn't have things like electricity, let alone technology, and things like food went through a natural ebb and flow. So we went from a point in time where during certain seasons, we worked harder, we consumed more food, and we had longer daylight in order to get the things done, in order to prepare ourselves for those colder, darker, slower seasons. But nowadays, we try to fit our lives into this very specific setup where people believe that, okay, it hits a specific time, therefore I need to be up. I work from this time, and then I go home. And so we're trying to do the same things in January that we were doing in July. And so that naturally kind of disrupts our physical cycles. Previously, we would consume less calories in the winter months because we just didn't have as much food. We would naturally rest and sleep more, and we would do things like people used that time for different forms of growth, a slower form of growth. That's where, that's why school systems have summer breaks, was because not that long ago, during those summer months, children were expected to work on the farms or within their family unit to help to prepare for those kind of colder months. And then those colder months were used for education and, again, some of those slower growth cycles. But now we have we have electricity, we have lighting around us all the time, we have technology, which there's more to say there, but then also we find ourselves that we have an abundance of food at all times, so people are consuming larger amounts of calories even during their slower times. Previously, it was a natural thing that you would eat larger amounts of food within that fall harvest time, and we would literally fatten up our bodies in order to prepare ourselves to go through those slower months. We never hit those points of famine or not having calories around us now, which is one of the reasons why we have such an obesity epidemic, because we are not naturally embracing those cycles. And then sleep is one of the biggest areas that we aren't embracing what our bodies are telling us to do. During the colder and winter months, and I know that's what it is here in the northern hemisphere. Clearly, this will be flip-flopped for those in the southern hemisphere. But during the colder months, that we should be sleeping more, slowing down, and using those waking hours for what I like to call slower growth, instead of trying to maintain the same growth patterns that our bodies would go through during summer months. So this is why a lot of times people have a much easier time falling into those exercise patterns and things like that during the summer months. It goes back to the rhythms of things. But getting back to sleep, we now interrupt a lot of our sleep cycles with things like technology. And I love technology. It is one of the biggest boosts to humanity. But when we are constantly throwing that information at our brain all the time, then we never go through those down times in order for our brains to slow down and recover themselves. And then this kind of segues into our spiritual cycles. And there's a lot of them to talk about, but the whole point of this channel is to simplify things. So the way that I like to look at it is there is a correspondence between our spiritual cycles or our spiritual journey within the natural cycles or the seasons of nature. And so this is where I like to break it down into spring, summer, winter, and fall. And please do not get confused here. Just because it is fall outside does not mean that you are in the fall part of your journey. We will each experience this just a little bit differently. But within the spring part of our journey, this is where we start to awaken. We start to question things, and we start to kind of have those little buds of understanding, knowing that there's more to learn and more to grow into. Then when we hit that summer point, This is where we kind of explode with growth. This is where you'll kind of consume everything that you can in order to learn about yourself or learn about spiritual practices and all of that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of energy involved, and it's a very quick growth, which will then lead you kind of into the natural fall point of your spiritual journey. And that's where you start to then go more introspective, and you take all of these things that you learned and you kind of start to turn it internal to yourself. And it starts to you go deeper into things, which then will lead to the winter part of your spiritual journey. And this is where we get terms like dark night of the soul or shadow work or existential crisis. But this is where, as we've gone deeper with this knowledge that we have, that then it goes very deep and things like trauma comes up. And then we have to slow ourselves down and go much more in depth in order to complete this cycle. And then once you complete that cycle, you will naturally find that you start the journey all over again. That once you've gone through those, you've figured out that more deep understanding of things, and you start to work through things, that then you'll kind of have that budding again, and you will start the process over again. And this is how a lot of our spiritual cycles will go, or our spiritual journey. It will naturally go through this cycle or evolution of things. So the biggest piece of advice that I can give you here is understand whether it is physical, emotional, or spiritual that you will naturally go through these cycles. And one, you want to understand where you are, and then two, embrace it. If this is a cycle of growth, then lean into it. That means that you're being pushed towards that much quicker movement, and find what you're being pulled towards. But if you are in a point of deep reflection or recovery, then allow yourself to lean back into that and allow yourself to go through that point in your journey. But don't try to restrict yourself or push yourself one way or the other. But again, the first thing is to do some thought, some of that inner work, to figure out where you are within that point of your journey. And then the other thing that I will say here is everybody has a different journey. So just because you are in a point of growth doesn't mean that everybody else is. So when it comes to your connections and things like that, you want to understand that they may be in a completely different season of their journey than you are at that time. So the closing message that I have kind of been felt to share with this tribe is that it feels like there is a lot of, I'm just going to say, budding connective energy out there. It seems that whether it's as people are waking up and finding new communities, or people are looking for friendships or romantic connections, that there's just this kind of energy of a lot of newness and excitement. And as wonderful as that is, I want to tell you to absolutely nurture those new connections, but also make sure that you're still staying true to you and your journey. Don't get so wrapped up in the excitement that you forget to stay within your true and authentic self. It just kind of feels like people need to hear that message. This YouTube channel is absolutely in its spring cycle. We're just starting to bud. So I would absolutely love it if you would hit the subscribe button and join us here. And if you gained some knowledge, please hit that like button, as it really does help out small channels like this. And so the last message that I will leave you with is I am sending you all so much light and love, and I hope you all are staying well, my friends.